Day 2 for the Intro to Quadratics for December 2nd. This is Tuesday, 2014. So on the second day, we reviewed the standard form for all quadratics. And if you look, the number in front of x squared, that's your a value. The number in front of x, that's your b value. And the number all by itself, that's your c value. Alright, so today we looked at just the a value, alright, and we looked at when it's positive, what happens with the parabola, with the graph, alright. So when a is positive, like 3x squared, so that 3 in front, alright, our parabola is going to open up, alright. So it rises to the left, rises to the right, and the vertex, the lowest point on a parabola, is going to be what we call the minimum. So when a is positive, our graph opens up, and the vertex is at the lowest point called the minimum. So we have a minimum when a is positive. Now when a is negative, our graph is going to open down, all right, and we'll have a maximum for a vertex, because if you look here, the vertex is at the highest point on our graph. So when a is negative, we have a maximum and our graph opens down. When a is positive, our graph opens up and we have a minimum. So for the second part of the lesson today, we looked at trying to find what that vertex is. Right? If you look, the vertex is a point. It's either for the minimum, the lowest point, or for the maximum, the highest point. Right? So a point has an x and y value on the coordinate plane. And to find the x value, we take what we did yesterday, the axis of symmetry formula. We plug that in with our AB, and we find our x. And then once we find our x value, we can plug that x in the equation we have, in the function we have, and we can find the y value. Let's go over the first example. Y equals negative x squared minus 6x minus 9. We need to find our a, b, c. For every single problem with quadratics for the next few weeks, we need to find our a, b, c. The value in front of x squared is a negative 1, so that's my a value. The number in front of x is negative 6, that's my b value. And my number all by itself, that's my c value, negative 9. I'm going to plug that in, the axis of symmetry formula, to find my x. That's the first part for the point of my vertex. So opposite of b is 6 over 2 times a, 2 times negative 1. If I put that in my calculator, I get negative 3. I'm going to take that x, I'm going to put it for the first part of my final answer for the vertex. The x value is the first part in our coordinate for the vertex. Now, to find the y, I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to plug in that negative 3 everywhere you see an x. So everywhere there was an x, I put a parentheses, and instead of x, my value for x is negative 3. So I'm going to go negative 1, negative, and you could say negative 1. And instead of x, because since we found x to be negative 3, I'm going to write negative 3 squared minus 6. And instead of x, I'm going to plug in that negative 3 minus 9. So everywhere there was an x, I plugged in a negative 3. When I type this all in my calculator as I see it, I will get my y value of 0. Once you know what y is, you go ahead and you put it in the last part of your vertex. So you find x using the axis of symmetry, and you plug that into your function, to your equation up here, everywhere you see an x, and you'll get your y value. And you plug that right into your last part of the vertex. So you have your x on your vertex and you have your y, your input and your output. So let's just review a little bit. If I look at my a value, which is 8, it is positive. Since it's positive, my graph will open up. So when asked, does it open, how does the graph open? If it's positive, it'll open up in this case. If it was negative 8, it would have opened down. Now since my graph is opening up, I have a minimum. So my graph opens up and I have a min. All right. When I'm trying to find the actual coordinate and value for my vertex, the first thing you got to remember is to find your a, b, c. My a in front of x squared is 8, my b in front of x is negative 16, and my c is 9. I'm going to plug the a and b into my axis of symmetry equation. So the opposite of b is 16 over 2 times a. 16 divided by 16 is 1. So for my vertex, my x value is 1. To find the y value, I'm going to go ahead and plug in my x, that 1, into the function, so into this equation. And so instead of 8 times x squared, it'll be 8 times parentheses 1 squared minus 16 times parentheses 1 plus 9. So since I found my x to equal 1, everywhere I saw x, I plugged in a 1. 8 times 1 squared minus 16 times 1 plus 9. And I'm going to put that in the calculator exactly as I see it. This is a minus, not a negative right here. So minus 16. And this is a plus 9. You need to have that exactly in the calculator. And once you get your answer, you hit enter, you get your y equals 1. So my vertex will be 1, 1. My x was 1, x equals 1, and my y equaled 1. So x for 1 and y 1. And again, this graph will open up, giving me a minimum.